It's been a couple of days now since the official reveal of Shimo from the SH Monster Arts line and from the Godzilla Kong New Empire movie, and I feel as though the dust has settled at least a little bit in terms of the initial customer and fan reaction to that figure's price point, but also its design aesthetic. One of the things that I don't feel as though the solicitation did a very good job of was relaying the scale of the figure by showing it next to other figures from the cast, and I do not count that an ominous teaser photo with Kong where he's kind of doing a forced perspective, he's in the foreground. Like, I don't really count that, and I feel as though if you're going to solicit a figure at such a high price and market the size of it as one of its defining features, then you should show me what it will look like compared to the other figures that I have in order to do it. So Michael over at the Articulation series has actually printed out a cutout of Shimo's concept art to scale with what we can expect from the figure itself, and he has taken photos of it next to other figures. So here with the Kong, you can basically expect this one-to-one because, as we know, Beast Glove Kong is utilizing this figure as a base, and you have to get the add-ons, which I still don't like. I'm still not a big fan of. But here next to Godzilla, I think it's been confirmed at this point that Godzilla Evolved will also be in the 6-inch scale, and so you can see how these two look together. And she is a little bit large. She's a little bit large. Now, someone else commented on one of my, well, I guess my previous video, name was Sky Figure Fun, saying like, hey, you know, Iris is almost the same price too. Iris is a little bit more expensive, but you know, so I told Michael, I said, hey, you should take photos of it, of the Shimo cutout with Iris, since Iris is around the same price point. So here you can see Shimo with Iris as on screen right now. You know, with Iris, there's a lot of engineering involved. There's a ton of accessories. And so as much as that price point is not very attractive to someone like me, you can kind of understand why it's as expensive as it needs to be. But I think it maybe does a good job of showing why maybe Shimo doesn't make sense at this price point. You know, it's got the Bandai Premium upcharge on it, but even then, it just seems like a lot. So, you know, as an example, we've got the SH Monster Arts Shin Godzilla here, and Shin Godzilla appears to be of a similar bulk to Shimo. The tail's definitely longer. Their bodies from the neck down are comparable. You know, you got the neck and the head, and then the front limbs being considerably smaller than Shimo, but I can't remember. I think Shin Godzilla was like 15,000 yen, something like that in that area. And Shimo's going to be 10,000 yen more than that. It's just a lot, man. Or 12,000 yen more than that. It's kind of silly. So there's the comparison there. Here's Shimo next to, I think this is special color version Biollante. And I really like this image because I like, you know, this Biollante I have. It's one of my favorite figures. The idea of having another colossal kaiju on my shelf to have her stand off with is very attractive to me. Not attractive enough to spend, you know, the 400 Canadian dollars it's going to cost me to buy Shimo. But I do like the way that these two look together. Now here's where we get to maybe some of the more interesting discussion around the Shimo figures. Here is the MonsterArts Shimo to scale with the updated G21 from Hiya Toys. And to me, this scale between the two makes a little bit more sense than, you know, this scale. This scale, I feel like Shimo is a little bit too big for Godzilla. Here, this makes a little bit more sense to me as they appear in the movie. You know, once we get the the evolved Godzilla with the abdomen caved in a little bit, I do think that these two would look better together in terms of scaling, not necessarily the aesthetic or the appearance of the figures, than with the Hiya. Speaking of the Hiya, Michael over at Articulation Series has also done a cutout of the Hiya Toys Shimo. And here you can see there is not a dramatic difference in size between the two. Like, there's a significant size difference. But as I said in my last video, I don't understand why the 7-inch Hiya figure is smaller than the 6-inch scale MonsterArts figure. And so that's what I mean when I'm like, yo, brand manager over at Legendary / Toho. Like, what are you doing? Like, why are you approving figures where the scaling and the sizing is out of whack? And so moving forward, like, here is the Hayatoys updated G21 with the Hayatoys Shimo to scale. Now, things can change between the solicitation and the actual manufacturing of the figure. Maybe this is not perfectly 1-to-1 scale, although Michael's done a decent job, I feel. Decent enough that we can talk about it. But if this is how it's going to be, like, I just don't really think that Shimo is appropriately sized here. I think that she should be a little bit bigger in comparison to what will be the Godzilla 21. Again, like, the chest will be caved in a little bit here, sunken in. The abdomen will be a little bit sunken in. But I just, based on the way that the two appear in the movie, I'm just not really convinced that the scaling is good. And I don't know why this won't let me switch over to PowerPoint. This is a real pain in the ass. Because I've got a couple photos here, but it's just like, no, I'm not gonna be able to switch over to PowerPoint. Okay, well, that's a shame. Oh well. Yeah, anyway, I just don't understand why the scaling has to be so different between the two. I really wish that the Hayatoys had the scaling of the MonsterArts, and you would expect a bit of a price increase, but nothing too crazy. And then you can bring the MonsterArts down in cost at least a little bit, like maybe get it closer to the 20,000 yen mark. At least then it's a little bit more digestible for folks who plan to pick it up, which is not me. But those are just my thoughts on it. Now, one thing I wanted to talk about a little bit more was the sort of the fan reaction and how I don't think you can rely solely on fan reaction to dictate the financial or commercial success of a product. And the example that I'd like to talk about is actually a figure from NECA. I shouldn't say a figure, a release from NECA that came out earlier, or was it earlier this year? No, it was late last year. My apologies. And that was this. It was this Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles sewer lair. This thing was shown off, I think, at San Diego Comic-Con, along with a couple of other layers, and NECA was saying, yeah, we're planning to release these one by one, and depending on how the first one does, then maybe we'll do the second one, and then the third one. And so people seemed really excited about it, because they've got tons of turtle figures at this point, and NECA did the street scene diorama for I think $150 earlier in the line, like much earlier in the line. And so when this was unveiled, people were pretty excited about it. And then it turned out that the price was $300. It was $300. People were losing their minds. I remember on Instagram, the NECA Instagram post was getting berated with hundreds of comments from people being like, this is absurd, like price gouging, all that stuff. And then, like talking to thousands of likes, people just being very, very upset with the price of this release. Now, granted, it's like 25 inches wide. It's a pretty sizable thing. And NECA commented on their own post to say, hey, we're not deleting any comments, because people were accusing them of deleting comments, and they're like, we're not deleting comments. Or if you go to that post now, comments are limited, and I don't think there's like a single comment with more than 5 likes anymore. So like this release was widely regarded as a problematic thing. And you might say, like, there's a difference between a Godzilla product and a domestic Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles product, because there's it's a cultural difference. And I think that's a fair comment to make. But what I will say is that I think it's about the relative difference between regular releases in a line and then the deluxe price things like this. A NECA figure in 2024 runs you like $30 to $35. So for this to come out at $300 USD, almost 10 times the price of any single turtle figure, that's what we're talking about here. It's that stark contrast. And so people were very, very unhappy about this, and it really seemed as though not enough people were going to support this release you know, not only for this to not get made, but like for future releases to get made. And so it was so bad that a company named Ramen Toy came out and said, "Hey, we're going to release our own like third party sewer layer. It has, this bottom part has the same dimensions as the NECA one, but you also get a street scene diorama. The light above the door works. And it's all modular. Like, you can take pieces apart and plug them into different things. And I think this thing is going to launch for like $250 shipped. Something like that. Like, it was just incredible what came out of this reaction to the pricing of this layer. But it did sell well enough that NECA put up a second one. They put up a second sewer layer at the same price, $300. I think they threw more in the package, which was good. It was a good move to make. But like, there was all this noise around this release, and then they did it again. Now you might argue like people are just stupid, like they'll complain and then they'll buy the thing. But the only point I'm trying to drive home here is like, you know, of all the conversations that have happened regarding Shimo, it'll be interesting to see how that translates into the actual performance of the figure and whether or not we see larger deluxe releases down the line. Now, granted, for Godzilla, it's not like a ton of large kaiju to draw from, but, you know, when they come around, are they going to do it? I guess we'll just have to see. You can't rely on the fan chatter alone to dictate the success of the figure. The only figure I have ever seen like effectively bullied off the internet was this thing. The Ultimates like skull SpongeBob from Super 7. This thing went up, and I think within 48 hours it was taken down. It's been pulled down from everywhere. You might be able to find a listing on Big Bad Toy Store. This thing was just, it was not received well. People really didn't like it. It was actually quite remarkable to see, and it was just pulled down, gone. You within 48 hours. Like, you just can't see this thing anymore. So, yeah, those are just some thoughts now that things have kind of calmed down a little bit. I still think that the scaling for Haya and MonsterArts should have been swapped, but I am very curious to see how the figure does when people get it in hand, if they'll be happy with it. God knows it needs to have good quality control because you're paying so much for this thing. But I guess we'll see. We'll see how it does. You know, will it sell enough that we'll see a beam variant? I don't know. Like, we never got a beam variant of Ghidorah. We did get a special color version though in gold. So if any of you were hoping for a Frostbite Blast, I guess we'll have to depend, and we'll have to wait and see on how the sales for this one go. So that's going to be it from me. Nice little Monday morning video for you all. Have a great start to your week, and I will talk to you again soon. See ya!